Emily drove her old sedan along the long, winding highway, the golden sun dipping low behind the distant hills. She had been on the road for hours, her mind focused on the new life that awaited her in the small town ahead. The city she had left behind was a whirlwind of noise and crowds, and now, she was seeking something quieter, simpler. She wanted a place where people smiled without hurry, where the air smelled of fresh earth and open sky, not smoke and asphalt. She dreamed of a life where every morning she could hear birds sing and see fields stretch as far as the eye could see. The highway was mostly empty, and Emily felt a rare sense of peace. The gentle hum of the car's engine was the only sound accompanying her thoughts. Occasionally, a hawk would circle above the fields, and she would watch it for a few moments, fascinated by its freedom. She had grown up in a city where wildlife was only seen in zoos or on screens, and even the simplest sight of a bird gliding in the sky felt like magic. But just as she rounded a curve near a small ridge, Emily felt a sudden jolt. The car sputtered and shook. She tried pressing the gas pedal, but nothing happened. Panic rose in her chest as she realized she was miles from any town or gas station. Her phone had no signal, and the sun was beginning to slip behind the horizon. She pulled the car to the side of the road and stepped out. The air was warm and smelled faintly of dry grass and dust. She opened the hood and stared at the engine, but the problem was beyond her knowledge. Emily sighed and sank onto the edge of the road. She had always been independent and resourceful, but this was different. The isolation made her feel small, almost invisible against the vast plains stretching in every direction. Just as she began to feel hopeless, she noticed a figure walking toward her from the horizon. The man moved slowly but confidently, a long stride that seemed perfectly suited to the open land. He wore a worn cowboy hat and a faded denim shirt. Dust clung to his boots, and a leather belt with a simple buckle held up his jeans. There was something calm and steady about him, an unspoken confidence that made Emily feel a mixture of curiosity and relief. When he reached the car, he tipped his hat slightly. "Need some help?" he asked, his voice deep and even. Emily nodded, unsure what else to say. "Yes, please. My car just broke down, and I don't know what to do." He crouched down by the engine, examining it carefully. He didn't speak much, but his hands moved with skill and precision, as if he had done this many times before. Emily watched him, fascinated. There was a quiet patience in the way he worked, and she realized she felt oddly safe in his presence. After a few moments, he stood and wiped his hands on a rag he had pulled from his pocket. "You've got a spark plug loose," he said simply. "I can fix it for you." Emily offered him money, but he shook his head. "No need. Just glad I could help. You're safe now." Despite his modest words, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this man than met the eye. He didn't talk about where he came from or where he was going. He seemed almost like a traveler who belonged nowhere and everywhere at the same time. Once the car was running again, he stood back, adjusting his hat. "Better get on your way before it gets too dark," he said. Emily thanked him again, her curiosity growing. "Do you live around here?" she asked. He smiled faintly, almost sadly. "Not really. I just wander a bit." With that, he tipped his hat and started walking away. Emily watched him until he was a small figure against the vast plains, dust rising behind his boots. She felt a strange pull in her chest, a mix of admiration and something she couldn't quite name. There was a mystery about him that she wanted to understand. The rest of the drive was quiet. Emily's mind kept returning to the man she had met. Who was he really? He moved with the ease of someone who knew the land intimately, but there was something almost hidden behind his calm exterior. She wondered why someone so capable and skilled would be traveling alone, without a home or a parent family. By the time she reached the small town, the sun had fully disappeared, and the sky was painted with deep shades of purple and orange. She checked into a modest inn, feeling tired but strangely energized by the day's unexpected encounter. That night, she lay awake listening to the sounds of the town, the occasional bark of a dog, the distant hum of a train, and the wind whispering through the fields. Every sound reminded her of the vast world outside the city she had left behind. Days passed, and Emily began to settle into her new routine. She started her job, met neighbors, and explored the surrounding countryside. Yet, the image of the man in the dusty cowboy hat remained vivid in her mind. She often imagined him walking along the highways, helping strangers quietly, never asking for thanks, never staying in one place too long. There was a kindness in him that felt rare in the world. One afternoon, as she was walking near the edge of town, she saw him again. He was tending to a small herd of horses near a ranch just outside the town. The way he moved with the animals, the gentle touch he gave them, and the quiet authority he commanded made Emily stop in her tracks. He looked up briefly, and their eyes met. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. He offered a small nod and then returned to his work, almost as if nothing had happened. Emily felt her heart race. She didn't understand why seeing him again affected her so deeply. There was an air of solitude around him, but it wasn't lonely. It was strong, quiet, and steady, qualities she had always admired but rarely encountered. Over the next few days, Emily found herself watching for him whenever she ventured near the outskirts of town. She began to notice small things, how he interacted with the land, how he treated every living thing with respect, how his presence seemed to make the world feel calmer. Every encounter left her with more questions than answers. One evening, as the sun set over the rolling hills, Emily found herself on a small ridge overlooking the valley. The man appeared in the distance, silhouetted against the fading light, walking slowly with his hat tilted forward. She called out softly, and he paused, looking in her direction. He didn't come closer but raised a hand in greeting before continuing his walk. Emily realized that there was a story behind him, a story she wanted to understand. She didn't know his name beyond the faint introduction he had given her, but she felt connected to him in a way that she couldn't explain. There was a depth in his eyes, a history written in the lines of his face, and a quiet strength in his posture that drew her in. That night, Emily couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about the stranger who had appeared so suddenly in her life. She wondered if she would ever see him again, if he would allow her to know more about him, or if he would simply remain a fleeting presence in her new life. She realized that meeting him had stirred something within her, a curiosity, a longing, and perhaps even the first flicker of a connection she hadn't expected to feel so quickly. As she drifted into a light sleep, Emily dreamed of the open plains, the golden sun, and the mysterious man who moved through the world like a shadow with purpose. She didn't know what the future held, but she knew one thing for certain: her life had already changed because of him. Something about his quiet presence, his skill, and his mystery had left an indelible mark on her heart. The days ahead promised new challenges and discoveries, but Emily felt ready. She had faced uncertainty and had been met with unexpected kindness. She had glimpsed a life that was both simple and extraordinary. And though she didn't yet know it, this encounter was only the beginning of a story that would shape her life in ways she could never have imagined. Emily settled into the rhythm of her new life in the small town. She quickly learned the streets, the shops, and the people who lived there. The town was tiny, a cluster of buildings surrounded by endless plains, and everyone seemed to know everyone else. Emily enjoyed the calm and the simplicity, though sometimes she missed the excitement of city life. Still, the quiet suited her. She could feel herself breathing easier, thinking clearer. Her job was at a local office that helped manage ranches and small farms in the surrounding area. Most days were routine: filing papers, answering calls, and helping people with minor problems, but Emily found satisfaction in the work. She liked seeing the farmers' faces light up when she solved a problem, and she loved being out in the fresh air when she visited the ranches. Each morning, as she drove along dusty roads lined with fields, she felt more at home in this wide open world. One late afternoon, Emily attended a charity event organized by the town. It was a simple gathering, tables with food, a small stage for local musicians, and people mingling under strings of lights. The event raised money for families struggling with medical bills and repairs to barns damaged in storms. Emily enjoyed watching the townspeople laugh, joke, and support one another. There was a warmth here that she hadn't experienced in the city, a sense that people truly cared. While walking near one of the food tables, Emily noticed a familiar figure in the crowd. He was leaning against a fence at the edge of the event, his hat low and his shirt dusty from the day's work. It was Jack, the man who had helped her when her car broke down. He moved with the same calm confidence she remembered, but there was an air of solitude around him, like he was present without truly being part of the crowd. Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had thought she might never see him again. Curiosity and a strange sense of connection drew her toward him. "Hello," she said softly. Jack looked up, his eyes briefly meeting hers. He gave a small nod but did not step forward. "Evening," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "I didn't expect to see you here," Emily continued, trying to sound casual. "Do you come to town often?" Jack shook his head. "Not really. Just passing through." Emily noticed a faint shadow cross his face, a hint of something unspoken. There was sadness there, a history she could not yet understand. Yet, he also carried a quiet strength, a presence that made her feel strangely at ease. They talked for a few minutes about ordinary things, the weather, the event, and the people around them. Jack's answers were brief but thoughtful. Emily sensed that he was careful with his words, that he chose them with precision. There was a mystery to him, something that made her want to know more, but she also understood that he might not share his story easily. As the evening wore on, Emily watched Jack from a distance. She noticed the way people seemed to instinctively respect him. Children ran past him without fear, animals seemed calm in his presence, and even the town elders gave him a quiet nod as they passed. It was clear he had a presence that commanded attention without demanding it. Yet, he remained apart, a lone figure in the midst of a lively crowd. Emily found herself returning to the event the next day, curious to see if he would be around again. As she walked near the outskirts, she saw him helping a neighbor repair a broken fence. His movements were efficient, practiced, and careful. He didn't ask for thanks, didn't seek recognition, he simply worked. Emily couldn't help but admire him. There was something rare about a person who could act with such quiet generosity, someone who could be strong and kind without needing applause. Over the following weeks, Emily kept noticing Jack in unexpected places. He would appear at the edge of the fields, helping farmers repair their equipment. Sometimes, she would see him riding a horse along the horizon, the setting sun casting long shadows behind him. Each time, he seemed almost untouchable, part of the landscape itself, yet always leaving a small impression on those who saw him. Emily began to hear whispers around town. People spoke of a man who owned vast lands but rarely appeared in public. They said he had lost someone important long ago and had chosen to live quietly, away from attention. Emily couldn't confirm the stories, but they fit the feeling she had gotten from him: the quiet sadness, the distance, and the careful way he moved through the world. One morning, Emily was delivering papers to a ranch several miles out when she saw him again. This time, he was repairing a gate with remarkable skill, the muscles in his arms moving fluidly with the work. He looked up, noticing her approach, and gave a small wave. "Morning," he said. "Morning," Emily replied, walking closer. "Do you live around here?" He shook his head slowly. "Not really. Just help out where I can." Emily paused, sensing there was more behind his words, but she didn't press. She had learned that with Jack, patience was necessary. He shared what he wanted to share, and no more. She smiled and nodded. "Well, the ranchers are lucky to have your help." Jack shrugged lightly. I do what I can. As she turned to leave, Emily realized she had been watching him longer than she intended. There was something magnetic about the way he moved, the way he carried himself, the quiet dignity in every action. She couldn't understand why someone with such ability and presence would remain so hidden, so solitary. Days passed, and Emily continued her routine, but Jack remained on her mind. She began thinking of him during quiet moments at work, imagining the stories behind his eyes, the experiences that had shaped him. There was a pull she couldn't explain, a curiosity and fascination that grew stronger with each passing encounter. One evening, Emily found herself at the edge of town, near the river that ran past the farmlands. The sun was setting, and the sky glowed with shades of pink and gold. She saw him again, sitting on a fence, watching the water flow. The sight was almost surreal. He seemed perfectly at peace, as if he belonged there more than anywhere else in the world. She approached cautiously. "Beautiful evening," she said, trying to start a conversation. He looked at her and nodded. "Yes. The river makes everything seem calmer." Emily sat a short distance away, watching the water with him. They didn't speak much, but the silence felt comfortable. It was as if words were unnecessary to understand each other, a rare connection that neither forced nor demanded. "I never see you in town much," Emily said after a while. "Do you usually stay out here?" Jack's eyes remained on the river. "I like the quiet," he said. "The world moves too fast sometimes. Out here, things make sense." Emily smiled softly, feeling a deeper understanding of him. There was a story behind his eyes, a history she didn't yet know, but she could sense it in the way he carried himself. He had been shaped by experiences she couldn't imagine, and yet, he moved through life with strength and dignity. As the sky darkened and stars began to appear, Emily realized that her fascination with him had grown beyond curiosity. There was a connection forming, subtle and slow, yet undeniable. She didn't know his past, his secrets, or the reasons for his solitude, but she felt drawn to him, compelled to understand him better. That night, as Emily returned to her small inn, she thought about the mysterious man who had entered her life so suddenly. She wondered what it would take for him to open up, to share his story, and whether she would be patient enough to wait. There was a part of her that knew meeting him was no coincidence, that their paths crossing meant something deeper. Emily drifted to sleep thinking of the quiet plains, the golden sunsets, and the man whose presence seemed to leave an invisible mark on the world around him. She didn't know what the future held, but she felt certain that Jack's story was far from ordinary and that her own life was beginning a journey she could not yet predict. Emily's curiosity about Jack grew stronger with each passing day. She had seen him so often now, moving quietly through the town and the surrounding plains, yet he remained a mystery. People spoke in whispers about a wealthy landowner who rarely appeared in public, but Emily had never thought it could be him. He didn't behave like a man who owned vast lands. He was modest, quiet, and focused on helping others without seeking attention. One afternoon, Emily was asked to deliver papers and documents to a ranch several miles from town. It was a large property, with rolling pastures, fences stretching for miles, and a cluster of buildings in the center. As she drove along the dirt road, she noticed Jack in the distance, walking calmly among a group of workers. At first, she thought it was another ranch hand, but the way the workers paused and looked at him suggested something else. There was respect in their gestures, a silent acknowledgement that he was not like the others. Curiosity tugged at her. Emily parked the car a little distance away and watched. Jack moved among the workers with quiet authority. He inspected the fences, gave instructions on repairing equipment, and checked the cattle with careful eyes. He didn't raise his voice, didn't show frustration, but everyone seemed to follow his lead. Emily realized that this was not the wandering man she had first met. This was someone with knowledge, experience, and control over something much larger than the small town. She approached cautiously, not wanting to startle him. "Jack," she called softly. He looked up, a flicker of surprise in his eyes. "Emily," he said, his voice calm. I I didn't know you worked here," she said, trying to sound casual. "I mean, I didn't realize you were in charge." Jack hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I help where I can," he said. There was a pause before he added, "It's better if people see only what they need to see. Things work better that way." Emily's mind raced. Could this really be the man everyone whispered about? The one who owned half the land in the state? It didn't fit with the quiet, humble man she had met on the highway. She wanted to ask more, to understand, but she could sense that Jack shared only what he wanted to share. As she spent the day on the ranch, Emily noticed the care he took in every task. He checked every fence, examined the water troughs, and even took time to inspect the health of the animals. The workers respected him not because of fear, but because they knew he understood the land and everything it required. Emily began to see that Jack's quiet demeanor was not emptiness, it was wisdom, experience, and a depth she had never encountered before. During a break, Emily and Jack sat under a large oak tree at the edge of the field. The sun was high, casting warm light across the pasture. "I never realized how much work this is," Emily said. "It's incredible how you manage everything." Jack leaned back, shading his eyes with one hand. "It's a responsibility," he said. "Not just for the land, but for everyone who relies on it. That's why I stay quiet and keep my distance. Too many people, they only see the wealth, not the work behind it." Emily nodded slowly. She had sensed there was more to him than he revealed, and now she understood a little better. Jack wasn't hiding out of shame or fear, he was guarding the life he had built, the responsibilities he carried, and the pain from his past. Over the next few weeks, Emily found herself visiting the ranch more often, under the pretense of work. She wanted to observe, to understand Jack, and to see the man behind the quiet strength. She noticed small things that spoke volumes about him: how he treated the animals gently, how he remembered every worker's name, how he repaired things himself rather than asking others to do it. There was a humility in his actions, a dignity in his solitude. Emily began to hear more whispers from the townspeople. They spoke of Jack's wealth in hushed tones, sharing rumors about the size of his land and the influence he had over the region. Some said he had lost someone important, that he hadn't trusted anyone since. Emily felt a pang of curiosity and empathy. She wanted to know the story behind the man who carried so much responsibility, who chose to remain distant despite the life he could have had. One evening, Emily stayed later than usual, helping with paperwork and organizing supplies. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and orange, Jack approached her. He didn't speak at first, just stood quietly, watching the last rays of light disappear. "You stay late a lot," he said finally, his voice low. "I like it here," Emily replied. "It's peaceful. And I enjoy helping where I can." Jack nodded. "Peaceful can be dangerous too," he said softly, almost to himself. "People think they know someone, but they don't. They assume, they judge. It's easier to stay apart." Emily felt a shiver of understanding. She realized that his distance wasn't just about solitude, it was about protection. Protection of his life, his land, and perhaps even his heart. "I'm not here to judge," she said gently. "I just want to understand." He looked at her, and for the first time, there was a flicker of something softer in his eyes. "Understanding, that's rare," he said. "Most people don't care to understand. They just want what they want." Emily smiled faintly. "I care," she said simply. For a long moment, they sat together in silence, watching the stars appear one by one. Emily realized that Jack's life was not ordinary. The man who had seemed like a simple, Wandering Cowboy was someone extraordinary, someone shaped by loss, responsibility, and quiet strength. She felt honored to witness even a small part of his world. In the weeks that followed, Emily began to piece together more of the truth. She learned about the lands he owned, the ranches he managed, and the influence he held in the region. Jack was not a man of wealth for personal pleasure, he had dedicated his life to the land and the people who depended on it. Every decision he made, every action he took, was guided by a sense of duty rather than desire. Emily also began to notice the subtle sadness in him. There were moments when his gaze would drift into the distance, and a shadow would cross his face. Sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, he would pause in the middle of a task and stare at the horizon, lost in thought. Emily sensed a story behind those moments, a story of love lost and trust broken. One afternoon, as they worked together repairing a fence along the far edge of the property, Emily gathered the courage to ask, "Jack, why do you stay away from people? Why not let someone in?" He paused, his hands resting on the wooden posts. He looked at her, his eyes searching hers as if deciding how much to reveal. "I've been hurt," he said finally, his voice quiet. "Long ago. I trusted someone. And I lost them. Since then, I've kept my distance. I protect myself by staying apart." Emily's heart ached for him. She wanted to reach out, to offer comfort, but she also knew that trust had to come naturally. "I understand," she said softly. "But sometimes, we can't live only in the past. We have to let life in, even if it's scary." Jack looked at her, and for the first time, there was a hint of vulnerability in his eyes. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he turned back to the fence, continuing his work with quiet determination. Emily realized that trust for him would take time, patience, and understanding. Over the next few days, Emily noticed small changes. Jack began to share brief stories about his past, his childhood on the plains, the work he had done to maintain the ranches, and moments of joy he had experienced despite the hardships. He didn't speak of love or loss in detail, but Emily sensed the depth of his emotions in the way he paused, the way his eyes lingered on certain memories. Emily also discovered another side of Jack, his generosity and kindness extended beyond the ranch. He quietly helped neighbors who struggled with repairs, donated to local schools, and ensured that families facing hardships were supported. He didn't announce these acts, nor did he seek recognition, but the people who knew him whispered about his quiet heroism. Emily began to see Jack not as a mysterious, distant figure, but as a man of substance, someone shaped by life, experience, and loss. She felt a growing admiration for him, a desire to understand his world, and perhaps, in time, to share a part of her own. By the time the sun set over the plains, Emily realized that Jack's story was only beginning to unfold before her. She didn't yet know all the truths he held, the secrets of his past, or the depth of his heart. But she felt certain that her life and his were connected in ways neither of them fully understood. And she knew that the man she had once thought was a simple wandering cowboy was far more than she had ever imagined. The more time Emily spent around Jack, the more she noticed the quiet kindness behind his reserved nature. He spoke little, but his actions revealed more than words ever could. Jack was always helping people, repairing broken fences for elderly neighbors, delivering hay to struggling farmers, and leaving supplies on porches without signing his name. Emily admired how he lived his life, not for attention, but because it was simply who he was. Despite his distance, Emily could see that Jack was beginning to trust her. His conversations with her grew longer. Sometimes, after a long day on the ranch, they would sit together on the porch steps, drinking coffee and watching the sun go down over the open plains. Jack would tell her small things, stories from when he was young, moments from his early days running the land, and lessons he had learned about weather, animals, and people. He still avoided speaking about his past heartbreak, but Emily felt the wall around him slowly weakening. One evening, After spending hours checking cattle across the pasture, Emily and Jack rested under the stars. The sky was clear, and the Milky Way stretched above them like a painted ribbon. The only sounds were crickets and the distant call of a night bird. Emily glanced at Jack, noticing how peaceful yet lonely he looked. "Do you ever get tired of being alone out here?" she asked softly. Jack didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed fixed on the horizon, as though searching for something long lost. "You learn to live with it," he said finally. "Sometimes it's easier. You can't lose anyone if you never let them close." Emily's heart tightened. "But you can't share the good moments either," she said gently. "Life isn't meant to be lived alone, Jack. You help everyone around you, but you don't let anyone help you." Jack gave a faint, almost sad smile. "You see too much," he said. "Most people don't look past what's on the surface." "I'm not most people," Emily replied firmly. For a moment, Jack said nothing. Then he leaned back against the wooden post, his voice low. "I lost someone years ago. Someone I thought I'd spend my life with. After that, I decided it was better to stay away. Better to keep my heart locked up where no one could touch it." Emily listened quietly. She didn't push for details, but her eyes softened. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Jack nodded once, his expression unreadable. "That's why I wander. That's why I don't let people close. When they don't know who I am, they don't ask questions. And I don't have to explain." Emily reached out and touched his arm lightly. "You don't have to explain to me," she said. "I just want to know you. The real you. Not the cowboy hat, not the landowner, just Jack." Her words lingered in the air, and for the first time, Jack looked directly at her. There was no guarded wall in his gaze now, only quiet vulnerability, as if he was deciding whether to believe her. "You're different," he said finally. "Most people see what they can take. You, just see." From that evening on, their friendship deepened. Jack began inviting Emily to ride out with him when he checked the fences or moved cattle. They shared laughter over small things: a stubborn calf that refused to walk in a straight line, a rooster that seemed to crow at all the wrong hours. Emily loved these moments, not because they were exciting, but because they were real. Out on the plains with Jack, she felt completely alive. Emily also began to notice how much Jack gave to others in secret. He paid off debts for struggling ranchers, supplied feed for animals during a drought, and made sure children in poor families had winter coats. When Emily asked why he kept it all hidden, Jack simply said, "Kindness shouldn't have a price tag. If people know where it comes from, they start expecting it instead of appreciating it." But even as Jack opened up, Emily could still sense the sadness beneath his calm exterior. He carried his past like a shadow, always just behind him, always heavy. She wanted to help him let go of it, to show him that life could still hold joy and love. One afternoon, Emily came across Jack repairing a barn roof alone. The wind was strong, and the ladder shook with each gust. "You shouldn't be doing that by yourself," she called. Jack smiled faintly. "I've done it 100 times. "That doesn't make it safe," Emily said, climbing up to help. Together they secured loose boards and nailed the shingles back in place. When the work was done, they sat on the roof, looking out over the wide pastures. The sun was dipping low, casting golden light across the land. "It's beautiful here," Emily said softly. Jack nodded. "The land's been my whole life. I take care of it, and it takes care of me." "And what about people?" Emily asked gently. "Who takes care of you?" Jack glanced at her, his eyes thoughtful. "I guess I never thought I needed anyone to." Emily smiled warmly. "Everyone needs someone, Jack. Even you." For a long moment, Jack said nothing. Then he let out a breath, almost like a surrender. "Maybe you're right," he admitted. I just forgot what it feels like to let someone close. Over the next few days, Emily noticed small but meaningful changes in Jack. He smiled more often, even laughed at times. He started showing her parts of the land that were special to him, a quiet grove of trees where he liked to rest, a hidden creek that stayed cool even in summer. He told her how his parents had raised him to value hard work and humility, how he had inherited the ranch but built it up with his own hands. Slowly, the man who had once been only a mysterious figure on a dusty highway was becoming someone real, someone with depth and heart. Emily, in turn, shared parts of her own story: why she had left the city, how she wanted a life that felt meaningful, not just busy. Jack listened without judgment, his steady gaze making her feel truly heard. Their conversations often stretched late into the evening, under starlit skies or by the soft glow of the porch lantern. Despite this growing closeness, Jack still held back when it came to love. Emily could sense it in the way he'd fall silent at certain moments, as if afraid to feel too much. She didn't push, but she hoped he would eventually see that love wasn't something to fear. Then one night, a storm rolled in suddenly. Lightning cracked across the sky, and thunder rumbled over the plains. Jack and Emily rushed to secure the cattle and make sure the animals were safe. The wind howled, rain poured in sheets, and the ground turned muddy beneath their boots. "Stay close to me," Jack shouted over the storm as they worked side by side. Emily had never seen him so intense, so determined. He moved with strength and speed, making sure every gate was locked and every frightened animal calmed. When the last of the work was done, they stood soaked to the skin, breathing hard in the rain. Jack looked at Emily, concern etched in his face. "You could have stayed inside where it was safe," he said. "And let you do all the work alone." Emily replied firmly. "Not a chance." For a moment, Jack just stared at her, rain dripping from his hat brim. Something in his expression softened, as if he was seeing her in a new light. "You're not afraid of a little danger," he said quietly. "I'm not afraid of helping someone who matters," Emily answered without hesitation. Jack didn't respond, but his eyes held hers for a long, unspoken moment. In that look, Emily felt something shift, something deep inside him that had been locked away for years. When they finally walked back to the house, soaked and tired, Jack glanced at her again. "Emily," he said softly, "thank you, for being here." It was the first time he had openly acknowledged how much her presence meant to him. Emily's heart warmed, knowing that she was breaking through the walls around his heart, one quiet moment at a time. The storm had passed, leaving the plains fresh and sparkling under the early morning sun. Puddles reflected the sky, and the air smelled of wet earth and grass. Emily and Jack moved through the ranch, checking the fences and animals one last time. The work had been exhausting, but both of them felt a quiet satisfaction. They had faced the storm together, and Emily noticed that Jack seemed different, lighter somehow, as if a part of him had been set free. As they walked back toward the house, Emily glanced at Jack. He was quiet, his usual calm expression showing a hint of tension. "You've been thinking," she said softly. Jack looked at her, his eyes serious. "I've been thinking a lot," he admitted. "About the past, about how I've kept myself apart for so long. And about you." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She stopped walking and waited, sensing that something important was coming. "I realized something last night during the storm," Jack continued, his voice low but steady. "I don't want to lose you. I don't want to push you away like I pushed everyone else." Emily felt a warmth spread through her chest. She had hoped for this moment, but hearing it from him made it real. "Jack," she said softly. He took a deep breath, and for the first time, he looked fully at her, not guarded, not distant, just him. "I can't promise the past didn't hurt," he said. "I can't erase the years I spent alone. But I can promise that I want to try, to let love back in. With you." Tears pricked at Emily's eyes, and she stepped closer. "I've been hoping for that," she whispered. "I've seen the real you for weeks now, and I care about you, Jack. I'm here." Jack reached for her hand, a hesitant but firm touch that made her heart flutter. For a long moment, they stood there in the soft light of the morning, hand in hand, feeling the connection that had been building quietly over time. It was a feeling both of them had kept hidden, afraid of the past, afraid of losing what they hadn't fully allowed themselves to have. The following days were filled with small but meaningful moments. Emily spent more time at the ranch, learning about the land, helping with repairs, and riding alongside Jack. He began to share more of himself, his memories, his fears, and even stories of the woman he had lost so long ago. Emily listened with patience and understanding, never judging, never rushing him. Jack's walls continued to come down, little by little. He laughed more openly, smiled more often, and even allowed himself to show vulnerability. He still carried the memories of loss, but instead of letting them isolate him, he was beginning to let Emily in, trusting her with the parts of himself he had hidden for years. One afternoon, Emily and Jack were tending to a small herd of cattle when a young calf became stuck in the mud. The storm had softened the ground, and the calf couldn't free itself. Emily moved quickly, her hands muddy as she tried to lift it. Jack rushed to her side, steadying her and helping to lift the animal out. Together, they succeeded, and the calf stumbled to its feet, shaking the mud from its coat. Jack looked at Emily, relief and admiration in his eyes. "I couldn't have done it without you," he said. Emily smiled, her face still smudged with mud. "We make a good team," she replied, laughing. It was moments like these that solidified their bond. They were partners, sharing not just the work of the ranch but the joys and challenges of life. Emily began to see that Jack's love for the land, his sense of responsibility, and his quiet strength were inseparable from the man she had come to care for deeply. And Jack began to understand that love wasn't something to fear, it was a force that made life richer, brighter, and more meaningful. As weeks turned into months, the connection between them deepened. Emily learned about Jack's careful management of his land, his secret acts of generosity, and the people whose lives he had quietly touched. She saw the depth of his character, the integrity in every action, and the courage it took to love cautiously after loss. Jack, in turn, saw Emily's kindness, her strength, and her unwavering belief in the goodness of people. She had shown him that trust and love could exist without fear. One evening, as the sun set over the wide plains, Jack led Emily to a hill overlooking the ranch. The sky glowed with pink and gold, and the land stretched endlessly below them. He turned to her, his expression serious but soft. "Emily," he said, taking her hands in his, "I've spent years guarding my heart. I've kept myself apart because I thought it was safer. But now, I can't imagine my life without you. I want to love, and I want to do it with you." Emily felt tears welling up, not from sadness, but from the overwhelming sense of joy and relief. "Jack. I've been waiting to hear that," she said, her voice trembling. He smiled, the first full, unguarded smile she had seen in months. "Then we start now," he said simply. "No more walls. No more holding back." From that day forward, Jack and Emily's relationship blossomed naturally. They shared quiet mornings walking the ranch, afternoons repairing fences, and evenings under the stars. Jack taught Emily how to care for the animals, how to ride horses across the open plains, and how to listen to the land. Emily, in turn, brought laughter, curiosity, and a fresh perspective to Jack's life. Together, they balanced each other perfectly, his strength and experience, her warmth and openness. Jack also began to involve Emily in the secret acts of kindness he had long performed. She helped deliver supplies to families in need, organize aid for struggling ranchers, and check on neighbors who were too elderly or ill to manage on their own. Emily realized that Jack's generosity extended far beyond the land he owned. It was a reflection of his heart, a heart that was now open to her as well. One morning, after a long ride through the fields, they sat together by the creek, watching the water ripple over smooth stones. Jack took Emily's hand in his, squeezing it gently. "I never thought I could feel this way again," he said quietly. "I thought I'd spent my life alone. But you've shown me that love isn't something to fear. It's something to embrace." Emily rested her head on his shoulder. "I'm glad I could be here for you," she said softly. "And I'm glad you let me in." Jack's eyes shone with emotion. "I'm glad too. And I promise, I won't let the past hold me back anymore. Not with you." As the days passed, Emily and Jack's bond grew stronger. The town slowly came to see that the once distant man was no longer alone. Jack participated more openly in community events, shared laughter with neighbors, and even let Emily lead him to moments of joy he had long avoided. He had not forgotten the pain of the past, but he had chosen to live fully in the present, with Emily by his side. Their love became a quiet, steady presence like the sun rising over the plains each morning. It wasn't loud or dramatic, but it was enduring and true. Emily and Jack had both been shaped by life's challenges, but together they discovered that love could heal old wounds, bring joy, and create a future filled with hope. One late afternoon, as they watched the sun set in brilliant colors over the ranch, Emily leaned her head against Jack's shoulder. "I never thought I'd find someone like you," she whispered. Jack wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. "And I never thought I'd let anyone in," he said softly. "But here we are. And I'm not letting go." The ranch stretched before them, peaceful and golden in the fading light. Emily realized that this life, simple, open, full of care for the land and for one another, was exactly what she had been searching for. And Jack, for the first time in years, felt whole. He had allowed himself to love again, to trust, and to share his life fully. As they walked back toward the house together, hand in hand, the wind rustled through the fields, carrying the scent of fresh grass and earth. The world felt alive, promising, and full of possibilities. Emily and Jack had found not just love, but partnership, trust, and a shared purpose. And in the quiet, golden light of the plains, they knew that this was only the beginning of a beautiful journey together.